here and everybody's on this side of the room, and so now I'm standing over here. So this is it's going to be unique. It's going to be an interesting challenge. It's also thank you. Look at that. Thank you for taking my cues. So welcome everybody to the 25-26 State of the Schools. This is also my first State of the Schools that I have ever done, because this is my first year superintendent at Royal Oak, but my first year superintendent overall. So very happy to be here. I'm really excited. It has been a wonderful start to the school year. It has been like the fastest 2 to 3 months that I have ever experienced. It has been like the fastest 2 to 3 months that I have ever experienced, and that's a good thing. It feels like I've been here for years, even though it's only been a couple of months, but it's been great. And I've been so happy and so supported. So welcome to the 25-26 school year. So tonight we're going to talk about some of our opportunities, some of our challenges, some of our strengths, some of our weaknesses, and talk about some of the programming that we have, and give the community an opportunity to not only see some of the programming, but I'm happy to take questions from anybody here. So as you're thinking about this, think of some questions you'd like to ask, as the 4 board members are sitting up front going, oh my, what is he going to say when they ask a question? But we're going to give it a shot and see how we do. So is that okay? I'm just kidding. You have questions? I can't wait. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to acknowledge a few people in this room. So first, to the school board, when I was going through the process of vetting the district, I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over, because a job interview is just as much, do you want them as do they want you? And so in schools today, it is tricky. It can be very challenging. But I think one of the things is we want to make sure that we are in a situation where we're all aligned. Because if I'm not aligned with the board, or the board's not aligned with me, or the teachers aren't aligned with the board, or vice versa, I don't think that's healthy for anybody. I don't think that that serves the students best. And so I think that the time, the effort, the stewardship has been wonderful, and being a positive force for our students, for our staff, has been great. So thank you to the school board. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight is, I think, the fiduciary responsibility that the school board has shown over the last handful of years, and further back than that, is allowing us in these tough times to be able to make much easier decisions. If the worst happens at 11:59 p.m. tonight and we go into shutdown, it's unfortunate to say, because we never want to pit people against each other, but the children in Royal Oak, who we are all responsible for and who are number one on our priority list, are going to be fine for months because of the cash on hand. And again, you never want to say stuff like that, but it's the unfortunate reality. I was selected to be the superintendent of Royal Oak, not the superintendent of, mid-Michigan or struggling districts or any of those things. We have an opportunity to continue our programming and make sure that our kids continue to receive excellent services. So thank you to the board. We also have settled contracts with all 4 of our unions, and labor piece is something that cannot be underappreciated. I think we see it in some of the other districts, and again, that causes strife within different groups, and that happens at parent events and community events and in classrooms and all of those things, and that's never great. And so we actually have one of our union presidents here this evening, Mr. Miner, Carrier Miner. Yeah, that's you. So we appreciate the work that she's done on behalf of our largest union, the ROEA. And then we have some other members of ROASA, which is our administrative union, ROESA, our secretaries union, and then we also have, do they have an acronym for our psychs? RASPA. So we have a RASPA union as well, the union for our psychs, and it was very nice to come into that situation and not have to worry about, how are we going to do this with this looming financial system over our head. So, and finally, I'd like to thank Ms. Perkins. She has been wonderful, along with Mr. Walensky, Dr. Ioannis, and Miss Abella, the cabinet. They have just made this transition so seamless in my first year, and given me all of the knowledge and information that I need, kind of pushed me in the right direction when I needed to go in the right direction, and then pushed me away when I was going in the wrong direction. And that is just as helpful as some of you can probably imagine with my personality. So the first thing that I want to talk about, because I do think it's the most important, and I think we have to talk openly and honestly about it, is academics and instruction. I believe most importantly in rigor in our academics. And I want rigor at all levels, and I hope that this is apparent to our leadership team, to our administrators, to our teachers, and to our students. And so no matter what that level is, rigor doesn't always mean more work or harder work or an AP class. Rigor means, where is the student ready to go, and how can we ensure that they get there? And so it means making sure that we can find our students' levels and ensuring that we can level them up. I think that that's really important, and I talk about that a lot when we talk about what happens to our students post-secondary, but I think it applies K-12. And we're going to talk a little bit about engagement later, and when you talk about how you give students agency, that is something that varies at different levels. And some of you might say, how would you give a kindergarten agency? How can you give them control over their own learning? But it's perhaps the easiest because you can give them choice. And you can say, what would you like to do right now? What would you choose to do with this time that you have? And how can we either structure that time so that it's most beneficial to you, or leave it unstructured so you can explore your creative side, or do something that you want to do and something that you're passionate about. So that would be a rigorous experience for me, giving students agency in their own learning at all grade levels. I think another important thing is to be present. That has been one of my goals this school year, and I'm trying to be everywhere all at once, and I can't, but I think I'm getting close. And so I'm going to continue to try. And at some point, I want somebody to say, like, are we sure he doesn't have a twin brother? Because I think it's important, and I think it's a form of respect. I think that one of the things that we don't have an unlimited amount of is time. And so the more time I can spend in somebody's space, the more respect that it shows that I have for that person. And so if I come visit Miss Foss in her 5th grade classroom at Upton, I think that shows that my time allocation, that is important to my allocation of time. I mean, as you can imagine, time is limited. My time is limited. I'm being pulled in 9 different directions by, our 9 schools. And I also have my lovely family at home and my parents and all of that stuff. And then I like to do things that are not at school during the school day. And so I'm being pulled in a million different directions. So I think that by showing up and being places and walking the buildings with Ms. Bascom-Keller and Mr. Taylor, I think that that's important to show them that I do care about the work that they're doing. And then finally, be intentional. I think that a lot of times we get intentionality confused with cruelty possibly, and like maybe being mean. I like to be intentional and to have direct conversations, but I think we can do it from a place of warmth and from a place of kindness. And we can say, here is a direct conversation that I want to have, and here is how I think that we can improve. And I think that we need to say these things openly and honestly so that we can move forward. One of the things that I started to look at, and this is a little chart, and year to year matters less than kind of the view of the overall chart. And I'll tell a 2-second story about the history. Nothing I say is 2 seconds, never mind. I'll tell a 2-minute story about this chart. So it was 2016, I just started in Allen Park, and I had all these fancy charts. I just got my doctorate degree. I was the smartest guy in the room, obviously. It was amazing, and I was like, went to my superintendent, I'm like, Mike, look at all these amazing charts. He's like, I don't care about any of that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't care? And he's like, I don't care. Like, I can't read that. I don't know what it even means. He said, where are we at compared to Trenton, which was a neighbor? Where are we at compared to Woodhaven? What about Southgate? And I was like, you're literally telling me to make a list? And he's like, yeah. Just put us on a list and make, if you made us green, that would be really cool because that was our color. And I was like, this guy, this is unbelievable. Like, I just showed him PhD, even though I have an EDD, PhD level charts and graphs, and this dude wants me to write a list down. And it is the most effective data point that I will ever show anybody. And people are always amazed at the simplicity. Because you can take a look at this, and you can see exactly where Royal Oak is at over the years. And again, this doesn't need to be something where we look at and say, in 2024, why were we 9th out of 12 schools? And then in 2025, we went up to 8th. What did we do to get up to 8th? It is not about that. It is our overall trends and our areas where we're looking at, hey, what do we see that is trending up? What do we see that is stagnant? And where do we see that is not great? And how do we fix those things? And so we're doing that with our district, and we're doing that with our schools. And I think both of those things are important because I think everybody needs to know where they stand. So we have these 3 pillars that we're going to kind of focus our vision on. And there's other things that come with this. I talked a lot about nuance, and so we're not going to hit everything with this. Like, we don't, just being present isn't going to make things better. Just saying we're committed to rigor isn't going to make things better. We have to do all of these things in conjunction with each other, and we have some other work that we need to do. And so you saw that little chart that I collected, the list, Mike Darga's list is what I'm going to call it from here on out. But I basically kind of used Mike's philosophy, and I said, who do we think our neighbors are? And so I have some of our peers on there, and I kind of looked at this as a young family. If I had the money to move to Royal Oak and buy a house and settle down with my 2 daughters, I probably could also get a house in Berkeley, Birmingham, Avondale, and Troy. Okay, so those, and Bloomfield Hills. Those are my comparisons for if I'm a young family looking to settle down and I look at data, this is where I would go. Then I compared single high school districts that I think are relatively analogous to us, like Lake Orion and Oxford, and what was my other one up there, Clarkston. And then I said, what are our geographic peers? Like literally who do we border? And that is Lamphere, and that is Ferndale, and that is Clawson. And so I think this is a good list of peers so we can see where we stand and where we realistically need to go and what work we have to do and what work we can say, this is really good, and how can we make sure that this happens in other places. And so one of the things that we're looking at on this, again, it's less, and we're not 11 out of 12. We're just, that's alphabetical. When you go through, sorry, I didn't want to scare everybody. But when you go through and you take the averages of every single 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 11th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 11th, 5th, and 8th, 5th, and 8th, in all of our areas, we're average about 6th or 7th, okay, out of those schools. When I looked at that, I started talking to some of the teachers, and I think our input is way up here. I think we have a really hardworking staff. I think we have really hardworking students. I think we have really good administrators who work their butts off. I think our parents are extremely supportive of our children and of our schools. And so then when I look at the output and I see that we're like kind of 6th or 7th on that list, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we can be very proud of that. I think, oh no, not the 6th, 7th thing, Ms. Foss, I'm sorry. I didn't even do that on purpose. When we are 6th on that list, I think that our output can rise up to match our input. I think that that is a reasonable goal for us, where we can look at the work that we are doing and say, is our input aligned to our results? And right now, I don't necessarily think that is where we're at. I think we are in some parts, and I think we're nibbling around the edges. And again, I think these are scores and data that we can be proud of. But I think one of the things that I want to talk about in the state of the schools is how can we enhance those results and how can we get better, especially in ELA and reading, which I think will fuel our science and our social studies scores. And again, it's not always about scores, but I think we need to start somewhere. And so the first assessment that I'm going to show tonight, and we're going to have a board meeting in October that's going to dive a little bit deeper into some of these other scores. But the first one that I want to show, this is all of our students that take the iReady assessment. And the iReady assessment is a benchmark assessment that's given 3 times a year. You do have the ability, students do have the ability to work on what their weaker areas are throughout the year. I think they call them, do they also call them learning paths in iReady? So they work on their learning paths throughout the year in iReady so that they can improve, and as they get better at a specific standard, it will increase the difficulty of that standard, and if they need the difficulty to be lowered, the program automatically will lower it a little bit. And this is only one assessment, this is only one data point, but when we look at our growth data, 67% of our students are at or above grade level as far as growth, which is really good. But then when you flip that the other way, what does that mean? 33% of our students are behind grade level. And so that's an area where we want to work on. Can we get our students to at or above grade level? Can we get more students to at or above grade level? And we're going to talk about the tiers in a little bit. So like the reds, the yellows, and the greens, and kind of what percentages should be where and where we know we can get better. And so now we're looking at our proficiency. So the first one is growth. Whoops. This one just says that our kids grew. It does not say if they are on target or if they are where they should be. It just says that they grew. It does not give us really much other data, much more data than that. And the kids who are in the green grew more than other students who started where they were at. So this says this is where their proficiency is. So if I have a third grader and they are at a second grade level, they're probably in that yellow right there. If I have a third grader and they are reading at a first grade level, they're probably right there in that red. Okay, so no matter what their growth was, it doesn't matter. If they're a third grader and they went from first to second grade, they're probably going to be in the green here because they grew a lot, but realistically, they're still a grade level behind, so they're going to be in the red up there. So that means that we have some work to do with that kid. So that's why we want to use multiple measures. We want to support the growth that those students get, but we also want to understand that if they are behind, there's only so much that they can do reading at a third grade level. Okay, we all know that. And so we want to make sure that we're pushing our students. Again, this goes back to the rigor for that student. Can we expose them to books and texts that are a grade level above so that they see what those words are and they have those anchor standards and those anchor texts from a grade above? And so when you talk about these different tiers, 67% being tier 1, we're going to talk a little bit about multi-tiered systems of support. And it's made up of 3 tiers for both academic and behavioral. And so for academic, you really want more like 75% to be in tier 1. And that means that if they are in a traditional elementary, middle, or high school classroom, just pick generic classroom X with generic teacher X who is delivering generic content X, the kid is progressing, the student is progressing at a typical pace for that grade level. So that would be your tier 1 students. Tier 2 students say if they are in that environment, they are not progressing the same as your typical student in that grade level. They may be a little bit behind and they may need additional supports. Those supports in tier 2 can happen inside of the classroom by the classroom teacher. Sometimes we have aides that will push in. Sometimes we have reading coaches or instructional coaches that will help those students. But those students need a little bit extra support to progress at your typical in your typical time frame. And then you have your tier 3 students, and usually those should be less than 10%. That should be closer, 8 to 10% as opposed to 11 where this is at. And so those are students who need more intense support. They might need special education support. They might already have an IEP. They might need more intense reading intervention. They might be EL students, which is an English language learner, who again need support. It does not mean that they cannot grow or that they are so far behind, like what are we going to do? It means that they need additional supports that we need to provide, and we need to determine what those supports are. So that's our ELA data. Our math data is not quite as good as our ELA data, but again, I think we really can't say like coming out of COVID because we have returned to those levels and we have exceeded those levels in many cases. But coming out of COVID, many of our students struggled in math, and I think some of those struggles still persist. But again, you see 60%, 59% of our students are at or above grade level, which is really great. But again, if 59% are at or above, that means 41% are below, so we got some work to do in math. When you look at our proficiency, again, we have a few more students in tier 3, not great. We have a few more students in tier 2 and a few less students in tier 1. So we really would like to see that tier 1% up closer to 80%. That's really where we should be at, and probably closer to 85. And so we know that we have some math problems. So what are we doing to help out here? How do we improve? Well, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to focus on instructional practices. And we have started talking about this with the administrators when they're going through and they're talking to their teachers, what they are looking for. And I think it's important to have common expectations for instruction and then common expectations for curriculum. The academic vocabulary would be a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So whether your child goes to Upton or Northwood or wherever they're going, they're getting the same set of standards that are guaranteed. And then there's differences between classes. One teacher might say, like, I have a passion in planets, and I'm going to get through my guaranteed curriculum, and I'm going to teach this kid about planets. And the other teacher might say, like, I love geology and rocks, so I'm going to get through my guaranteed curriculum, and I'm going to teach the standards about geology and rocks. And, like, that is okay. But the core area programming for 30 to 33 weeks of our 40-week school year needs to be guaranteed so every kid is getting the same standards no matter what school they are at. And that's a really important piece, because when you look at these scores, if we don't know where our students are getting those standards at, we don't know how to intervene. And so you have to set that curriculum up so that every kid gets what they're getting, and then you can start to see trends in our data. Oh, these students in this class or in this grade level or at this school are missing these key concepts, which are not allowing them to progress from tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1. So number 2, really important, is intervention within the classroom. We've gotten so good in education with creating these supports for students and allowing students to go on computer programs that are, artificial intelligence, and they're going to respond to them. I was just talking about iReady. But we need teachers to be able to support our students in their classroom with tier 2 instruction. And how does that happen? Well, that happens through small group instruction. That happens through push-in of professionals. And that happens when we support our teachers. Like, you can't say to your teachers, hey, you have 25 kids in the class, and they're at 25 different levels. I see teachers smiling at me. I know. But I'm going to push you, teachers. I'm going to say, what supports do you need? And once these supports are provided, okay, now how are we working with those supports? And so, again, that's the idea that we like to call in the superintendent's office and in the cabinet transparent accountability. We want to make sure that everybody knows where they stand. And it's not a mean conversation. It's not me saying you have to do this and I'm giving you no supports. It's me saying, what supports do you need? Now how can I help you, and now how can we improve? And so intervention in the classroom is a really important piece to this. Coaching and professional development. A lot has been made of the evaluation tool that teachers have, and there's, if you read the news, there's fights in the news. Should assessments be worth anything? Well, how do we know how our teachers are doing if we're not measuring what our kids are doing, and all of those things? And that's fine and dandy. The evaluation process by the state has to happen once every 2 years, once every 3 years. You get triannual evaluations, all of that stuff. Like, I'm not worried about the evaluations. What I'm worried about is what is the ongoing coaching and the ongoing professional development that is happening for our teachers. Because if a teacher needs improvement, we need to give them intervention just like we would give a student. We wouldn't let a student just continue to fall behind and just watch them and say, like, geez, I wish Deb would get better. Like, what am I going to do about it? I'm sorry, Deb, you're always sitting right here. Deb is my poor example. Last board meeting, she was running down Mr. Loomis's hallway shaking her fist at him. That's become like a meme. I need to get a picture of Deb doing this. So I obviously wouldn't let Deb do that as a student, so why would we let Deb do that as a teacher? So that is why we get to the next one, which is these organic principal conversations. And we've worked with our principals to come up with a cohesive set of what we're calling look-fors. So when they walk into a classroom, are they seeing the 4 types of engagement? What kind of engagement are they seeing? So we want to define engagement. You all are looking at me right now. You are all absolutely behaviorally engaged, which is like the lowest level. You all know how to play school. Mr. Walensky just took out his phone. He's not behaviorally engaged. So if I was doing instructional rounds, I would say like 21 out of 22 students behaviorally engaged. Most of you, as I'm looking around, are cognitively engaged. You're like, okay, this dude's saying something, I'm going to pay attention. Very few of you are like emotionally engaged and ready to attack the learning that is happening, which is really hard, but like, you're not there, and you don't always need to be. And sometimes you just need to get information. Like, you don't know what the heck I'm going to say for the rest of this, so like, how would you be emotionally engaged in this lesson? And then finally, the 4th level of engagement, which is the highest level, is that idea of agency in a classroom, and we call that agentic engagement. It's really hard to get our students there. You can't always get your students there. But when we have the opportunities to get our students there, we need to get our students there. So those are the ideas of some of the organic principal conversations that we have. It was funny. I was walking around a school with a teacher, or with a principal, and Dr. Ioannis. And there was this teacher that gave this, like, we were in this classroom for 3 minutes. What can you see in 3 minutes? I've heard that a time or two in my career. What did you see in my classroom? How would you know anyway? You're a high school guy. So anyway, What did I see in 3 minutes? Well, what I saw was her students were all behaviorally engaged. It was really, she was doing a very nice job. Like the kids knew exactly what they were doing. And it was like the second week of school and it was elementary school. So I am always amazed by that. I said my mother was an elementary school teacher. Like, I don't know what you all do as elementary school teachers, but it's amazing. And so the students were all behaviorally engaged. She had this really dynamic lesson that she was doing, and it was a math word problem, and she was showing kids who, by all accounts, should not be learning about math word problems, like learning about math word problems. They were young kids. They were, second or third graders or whatever. And she set up the problem, and it was perfect. It was textbook. It was exactly how you would teach it to a bunch of future teachers. And then she said, who wants to tell me, and then whatever it was, I don't even remember, how to set up the problem or what the answer is. And then I turned to Dr. Ioannis and I said, is she going to call on the student with her hands up? Or is she going to reach for the popsicle sticks that are right next to her, and is she going to make it equitable and call on a kid that she pulls out of the popsicle sticks? She called on the student with her hands up. And it was okay. Listen, that is a fine lesson, but there's this feisty, older, educational, brilliant mind. Her name was Anita Archer, and she said, every time you call on a student with their hand up, the achievement gap between that student and the rest of the class continues to increase. Because that student is answering every single question, and those kids that are sitting there, like poor Deb or Mr. Walensky, who's now leaving, are continuing to fall. I'm just kidding, Pat told me. Are continuing to fall further and further behind because they know that I'm just going to call on Miss Cook every single time, and she will continue to answer that question every single time. And so what some teachers will say is, well, when I pull out the popsicle stick, how do I know that I'm not going to embarrass Deb? What if Deb doesn't know that answer? Deb, what's the square root of 16? And Deb just stares at me. Ask Marianne. So this is where those relationships come in. We'll get to Marianne and Tim in a minute, Deb. But this is where those relationships come in, and that student knowledge comes into place, and being present in their spaces and knowing who they are, and all of those things that we talked about, being direct and being kind. And like it builds everything. It's from me on down, hopefully. But when I pull that popsicle stick, if the name on there says Deb, I might not be able to ask her the square root of 16. I might have to say, Deb, square root of 16 is 4, right? And then Deb can go like, yeah. And then all of my students saw that Deb knew the answer to that question. And they all saw Deb get some dignity and Deb get a little bit of a good feeling out of that. And now I can go to Michelle, or I can go to Marianne, and I can say, Marianne, I know Marianne's top talent kid. Marianne, how did Deb get to that answer? And Marianne would say, well, here's how you figure out the square root of a number. And then the kids heard it from me, the kids heard it from Deb, and they heard the explanation from Marianne. It does not seem like much. I was in this classroom for 3 minutes, but this is how you talk about intelligent instruction and intelligent instructional design. It's pulling a popsicle stick. We all have it. I used to use an app. I taught a college class of principals, and I used to use this app. You'd shake it up, and like a kid's name would appear, and they would all like, they were 30 years old making money as teachers, and they were like, that's my name, and So anyway, but you have to scaffold, you have to know it. And then finally, the last piece of that is MTSS implementation. And so that is, again, the multi-tiered systems of support. So how are we structuring it so that our students get the help they need when they need it? So this is pretty hard to see. I might have to go up here and jump. It's a joke for the 4 in the front. So anyway, what you probably cannot see on here, these are students that are listed on this side. These are assessments that kids have taken and their scores, and they're green, yellow, and red. And so green means they're at or above, yellow means that they are not quite there, and red means that they are below. So if we look at this student in particular, I can tell that this student struggled on these 2 assessments, okay? And so I know that the student struggled on these 2 assessments. They are red there, but they are green there. And so if we are not precise about this, what do we think might happen to this kid? They're going to end up in an intervention class that they don't need because they are already at or above grade level in this other area. And this might be a totally different subject area, or it might be a piece of one subject. And so when you get precise enough with multi-tiered systems of support, you can say in ELA, this kid is struggling with decoding and fluency, but they understand and they can read for information or listen for information. Or this kid is getting decoding and fluency, but once they put all those letters together that make sounds, that make words, that make sentences, they don't have any idea what they're reading. And so when you start to put students' assessments together, and when it stops becoming one data point in a kid's year and starts becoming something that we're doing more frequently that we can rely on, that's how you get to intervention. And that's how you get those scores where we're, sixth or sixth. I'm just going to say sixth. I'm not going to say the other. Where we're sixth. That's how you start to grow a little bit, okay? Because you start to get more precise. We're not a hammer where everything looks like a nail. We are intervening with kids where they need to be intervened with. And then we're finding patterns of, hey, our students are struggling in math. What aspects of math are they struggling with? Is it fundamental math? How do we do that? How do we attack that? Where are they struggling with fundamental math? Is it between 3rd and 4th grade? Is it between 5th and 6th grade? When we were looking at our assessments, we saw that our students were struggling in middle school, but then they'd get to 8th grade and they'd get this bump in 8th grade. And so what was happening in that 8th grade class? What were they doing different? Maybe the answer was nothing. Maybe our kids were maturing. Maybe it was an outstanding teacher. We don't know what it was. It probably wasn't an outstanding teacher. I'm just kidding, Carrie. It probably was. But those are the types of things that you have to look at. And what I know, even being here a very short time, is that Carrie and her 8th grade colleagues have a very specific way that they teach 8th grade mathematics, that we don't teach other grade levels. It's more of a project-based learning. Help me with it, Carrie. Building thinking classrooms. And so kids are displaying their learning. They have to explain their learning in different ways. It's a really unique and innovative way. There's Socratic circles. It would be kind of the analogous way in science. But kids don't just give you the answer. They tell you how they got to that answer. They show you how they got to that answer. They work collaboratively with each other. There's equity of response because the kids have to all demonstrate their learning. They can't just rely on Michelle, who is in the group of 4, to give them the answer. And so you know that there are differences. Now, can that be applicable everywhere? Probably not. Like, it takes a lot of work. It takes the capacity of the teachers. It takes training. It takes the kids to be ready. It takes all of those things to happen. And it's probably not practical everywhere. Again, sometimes we just need kids to know the information. We don't need our children in kindergarten to synthesize the alphabet. Knowledge is just fine. They can just memorize it. We don't need them up on the taxonomy scale at all. They can just say, like, I know my ABCs. Won't you come and play with me? That's great. We're done. We move on to the next standard. But sometimes we do need to get to that building thinking classrooms level. So we talked a little bit about the tiers of instruction. But again, think of universal support for traditional kid in traditional classroom, or any kid in a traditional classroom kind of goes through and they're able to handle it with no additional supports. And then you have to get more targeted as you go up in tiers. So now for some exciting stuff. We have some very exciting news. I talked about the vetting a little bit earlier. When I met with the board initially, I heard kind of the same things over and over. Did you know we didn't have busing in Royal Oak schools? Did you guys know that? Did you know that? Marge? I didn't know that. So I found that out. That was the first thing I found out. Did you know they don't bus at Royal Oak schools? The second thing I found out was that we as working parents need help with aftercare and before care, which is also known as latchkey. We're trying around here to change it from latchkey to before and after care. Latchkey has a negative connotation, so you'll hear me call it before and after care. Colloquially, it used to be called latchkey, but please, we're going to try and use the words before and after care. And so anyway, we started to explore like what our problem was, and our problem was being unable to hire people to stay with our students and to give them that high quality experience that we expect all of our kids to have and that we need for our students so that they'll stay engaged. And it's not as simple as, well, just post the job. Just hire someone. Why don't you, Molly, why don't you just hire somebody? Why don't you? We have an evergreen posting for paraprofessionals. It is always there. If you have somebody who would like to make in the, I don't want to speak out of turn, I wish Pat was still here, $17 to $22 range, they can come tomorrow and they can apply as a paraprofessional and we would gladly hire them. We've also asked our teachers, and they have been most accommodating, but teachers are also very expensive to stay after school. They will not stay after school for $17 to $22 an hour. And I don't blame them either, because I wouldn't stay after school for $17 to $22 an hour either. We went to school for a really long time. We became experts in our field. We should be paid like the experts in our field. We should be respected like experts in our field. It doesn't always happen in the news. We're just teachers. We're in it for June, July, and August, which is absolutely not true, and it's an insult. And so I wouldn't insult teachers by saying you should stay for $17 to $21 an hour. But we have all of these issues, and we have tried these things, and we have tried to combine, and we bust to Salvation Army and to the Youth Assistance Club, and all of these partners are helping. And so none of that has worked to this point, and it's been okay, but we still have wait lists, we still have lotteries, we still have all of these other things. And so we're working with a company called KinderCare. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, and they have a branch called Champions, and Champions comes into schools and provides before and after care for students. They can do K-8. Right now, we're going to focus on K-5, and we have successfully started the transition. I know it was a little bit of a bumpy road. Thank you, parents, for dealing with the sign-up, and you're going to get reimbursed for the initial fee that you were charged, that you weren't supposed to be charged, and we're going to work through all of those things. But we're happy to announce that we are able to, you guys didn't even know about it, did you? We did such a nice job on communication that nobody even reached out to U7. Isn't that amazing? It's unbelievable. Danielle Truesdell just at work. That's what she does. She is magical. So anyway, it was a little bit of a bumpy road, but the great thing about it is that's what they do. Like, you do not want them educating your child between 7:30 and 3:30 p.m., just like you do not want us to, we can, but attempt to take care of your child in an aftercare program between 3:30 and 5:30. It's just not a part of our core mission. We try, we're decent at it, but we're not great at it. And so that's what they do, and so they're going to come in and help us out, and they're going to make sure we're excellent in that area. The other thing on the aftercare, in that vein, we're working with a couple of different groups to offer enrichment activities to our students after school. So we've started with, I don't want to announce the two groups, but one of them is going to provide arts for us after school in the school building. You can pay for an enrichment class, and don't quote me on the price, because prices are going to be different depending on what it is, but it'll be about $20 for a 1-hour session once a week, and the sessions will go for 5 or 6 weeks. And they'll be in the school. The instructors will come to us. There's going to be art, there's going to be PE. We're looking into STEM and slime. You're welcome on the slime one, by the way, because my kids love slime and I will not allow it in the house. And so every time there's a slime class, like, you guys can sign up for slime, you can go do it at your elementary school. And so we're going to work on the slime one too. But we're looking at enriching our students after school, and that'll do two things. One, it will give them enrichment opportunities, and two, it'll give parents the opportunity to provide some aftercare to their students. That's not the same thing every single day, because as a dad with 2 daughters, my wife is an attorney. They go to aftercare when they have to go to kids club. They're like, "Dad, do we have to go to kids club again? I don't want to make melty beads anymore." Like, yeah, you got to go to kids club again. Make another melty bead thing. I'll put it on my keychain. It inevitably falls off. It doesn't matter. But yeah, so when they get the chance to go to a sewing class or a yoga class or an art class or a PE class, like, it's great and they love it. And so we're looking at that. The other super duper 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 exciting thing is our early childhood program expansion. And so right now we have early childhood at Adams, and there are 8 GSRP classrooms, Dr. Ioannis, yes? 8 GSRP classrooms. So we were trying to figure out how to expand this, because again, that's something that I have heard. And when a family makes a decision on early childhood education when they're growing up, and they say, like, we're going to send our kids because they have open early childhood education, and they're going to go to, District X. I don't want to give anybody any publicity who has an early childhood ed program. We're going to go to District X. We're going to go to Allen Park. They have a thriving GSRP program there. They never leave Allen Park. And so Royal Oak loses that student forever. And they lose that family forever. And they lose the FTE that comes with that kid. And they lose the opportunities and the experiences and the culture that that family provides. And all of those great things that our families and our neighborhoods do, that's gone because we did not have the capacity to support them in early childhood education. And so when I got here, again, as I'm doing the vetting, I hear that we have the opportunity to go for a bond in 2026. I'm like, that's amazing. Everybody's like, it's going to be early childhood education. I'm like, this is unbelievable. This could not work any better. Like, I'm going to pass a bond and build this center. It's going to be the Dr. Tafelski Early Childhood Education Center. It's going to be amazing. At least there'll be a statue up if it's not going to be named after me. But anyway. And then I had a board member like my first week on the job who said like, yeah, that's great, John, but no kids are going to get in there until 2028, best case scenario. So what are you going to do for the community between now and then? And I like walked out of there with like my shoulders down, and I'm like, oh God. So we got to work, and we looked at what our current space is, because we have a strategic plan, which you're going to see later, and it talks about optimizing our finance and our facilities for our Royal Oak students and for our Royal Oak community. And so like we just walked around, and I went to literally every space in this district, and I walked with other people, and we talked about it. Can we move this here? Can we do this? Can we do that? And in this building right here, there are two programs that are housed that are amazing. One is called Trails, and it is for our adult students with disabilities 18 to 26 years old. Just bought a coffee from Jesse this morning. He was great. Cookies are warm too. You got to get them first though, otherwise they're cold by the time they get to you. So anyway, that's Trails. The other program is Churchill Community High School, which is an amazing alternative high school for our students of Royal Oak and surrounding communities. And it's for students that struggled at the high school. And this is not necessarily struggled academically or behaviorally. Some students, I like getting up and talking in front of a crowd. I hope that's obvious. If not, I think these four need to rethink what they committed to. But I like to get up and talk in front of a crowd. Not everybody likes to do that. I didn't mind going to a comprehensive high school where you got all of the stuff and the Friday nights and the basketball games and the volleyball games and all of those great things, and joined robotics and went to debate and Model UN and all that stuff. For some kids, walking into that environment is the worst thing that they could possibly imagine. And so they're wonderful students. They want to go to college. They have all of the same dreams and aspirations that many of us had who went to a comprehensive high school, but that is just too much. And so we have this wonderful program here. There's about 80 kids at Churchill. And they are in this entire side of the building. So this entire side of the building is Trails and Churchill Community High School, and then this side of the building is central office. It's where my office is, and cabinet, and a handful of other administrative spaces. And so as I was walking around here, I was like, man, this is actually like a pretty good space. You have this really big hallway here that kids could run up and down, and I'm like picturing them using the parachute on like a snowy day in the middle of this hallway. Then you have this multimedia center over here that's beautiful, and I'm like, that'd be a heck of a gross motor space. There's all this green grass over there, so we go through it, and I'm like, I think we need to move early childhood here. What do we do about Churchill? And the one thing that I said to the board and to cabinet and to the director at Churchill and to the teachers there is they cannot be an afterthought. Because a lot of times in schools, the alternative high school is the afterthought. It is, this is the space that we have for you, go here, good luck. And so as we were walking around looking, we have these two wonderfully amazing rooms at the back of this center. When this was Churchill Junior High, was it a junior high? Middle school? Whatever it was. Churchill Junior High, Churchill Middle School. Those were it was a woods and an auto shop back there, I think, or a woods and a metal shop. So they are massive spaces. And right now they are unpolished diamonds, and they are two cinder block rooms that are absolutely huge, that have a ton of files in them. But I think as we show you the pictures on what we want to do, we're going to create a space that is going to bring some pride and some dignity and some self-esteem to these students, and we're going to create a space for our alternative high school students and rethink what it means to be an alternative high school student in Royal Oak schools. And that frees up the opportunity, long way of saying, we now have an expanded early childhood center here, and it's going to allow us to offer 2 more classrooms for 40 more students for free preschool starting in the 26-27 school year. And so that's 40 more families that we know are going to stay here. That's our wait list. We're going to get another wait list. But the great thing is, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too, we have a bond in 2026, and there's a lot of green space out that way. And so we can expand this to have 300 to 400 students pre-K running around here, getting all the support and all the creativity and all the fun that they need. And so we took a look at what we had, but for next year, it's going to allow us to open up 40 more seats for our early childhood students. And that leads us to the Churchill reimagination. And so right now, Churchill, again, it's a really good program. We graduate 70, 75, 80% of our students, which is unique for an alternative high school. That doesn't happen at all alternative high schools. The last alternative high school in the district that I was in, we graduated between 40 and 50%. By the time you got to the 5th year, maybe you were at 55%. By the time you got to the 6th year, maybe you got 1 or 2 more kids. And so this was a program worth heavily investing in, because the students are in there, they deserve it, but they also get the results. And I think that is really important to note. And so what we are looking at doing, and what I believe in fundamentally as an educational leader, I believe I'm responsible for our students 1 year after their high school graduation. Whatever that is. I call that 13th year success. So you have grade 12, it's grade 13. One of my astute board members said, but they're actually in school for 13 years because you didn't count kindergarten. So once you do that, it would be 4. It just doesn't have the same ring. And so like I'm ignoring her comment, even though she's absolutely correct, but it's 13th year success. And so how do we ensure 13th year success? And I think it's important that we give those students that experience while they're here and while we can support them. Because if we take a high school student and we send them off to a 4-year university and we say good luck and we do not give them any rigorous courses while they're in high school, we're doing that student a disservice. If we take a student who is interested in HVAC and we do not give them any HVAC experience while they are in high school and we kick them off into industry and we say good luck in HVAC, we are doing that student a disservice. So no matter what level our students are at, even if we have a student who wants to go into the service industry and wants to work in a restaurant, we can do things for that student to set them up. We can take them to Oakland Community College for their beautiful culinary arts program, and they can at least get their serve safe, serve safe, whatever it is. They can get that out of the way. It's a really important program, and if you want to be kind of a server as your job where you can make a lot of money, I mean, how many of us have been to a fancy restaurant? You see people doing extremely well. Like, you have to get that stuff out of the way. And so how do we give students that 13th year success while they are still in high school, whether they're at Churchill or whether they're at our comprehensive high school? And so when we looked at this was our inspiration for what Churchill is going to look like. There's an educational writer, David Thornburg, who talks about students needing in schools to have a cave where they can reflect, a watering hole where they can socialize, and a campfire where they can learn about knowledge transfer. And so I believe that is kind of fundamental in the space that we're going to design. And it's going to look a little bit different, it's going to feel a little bit different, but ultimately the students are going to have an in-person experience here at Churchill High School, which is going to be in the back. It's going to look something like this. Like I told the architect company, I was like, I want wall sconces. Can we get wall sconces? And they're like, we got wall sconces. Don't worry about that. So it's going to be a beautiful facility that kids are going to come into for an in-person education a few hours a day. But then for a few hours a day, they're also going to go to either a community college, Oakland University, Lawrence Tech for dual enrollment, or they're going to go with one of our educational partners like OSTC for their ACE program or for their career and technical education classes. If they want to go back to the high school and they want to take classes with Mr. Weeks or with Mr. Conrad, that's fine too. But we want to make sure that they get that experience in whatever they want to do the year after high school. And I think that's very important to us. And so that's what Churchill is going to look like. And that allowed us to accomplish both early childhood expansion and giving students that dignity, that esteem, and that pride that they need to make sure that they're successful in life. So I've gotten some questions about school safety, and I know that's kind of top of mind for everybody. We do have a very comprehensive approach. We just switched our protocol to I love you guys. The name I love you guys comes from a mom and dad, and that was the last thing that they heard from their daughter before she was tragically murdered. And they came up with a standard response protocol that they were hoping to make law. And they did, and it's a wonderful story that came from a tragic beginning. And so we've adopted their terminology, and we'll talk a little bit about it in the next slide. But from our standpoint, we have an emergency operations plan. We have go bags, the red bags. Those are ubiquitous. You will see those everywhere. Our emergency operation plans are everywhere. Police officers have them. We have all of those plans in place. We also have the night lock and the nightshade system. The night lock is basically a drop bolt that's on our door. And so if you want to essentially lock yourself in the classroom, you take it out of its case, you drop it in, and it fits into the floor, and you can't open the door, even if you have the key. The nightshade is it's a shade that you pull down so that you can't see in and kids can't see out. The night lock is only used in lockdown situations. The nightshade is used if there is either in hold, which we'll talk about, or in secure mode, because sometimes there's an incident in the hallway, you just don't want kids to see it that are in your classroom. And so it does not necessarily even mean anything went wrong. If a student is having a seizure in the hallway, you don't need kids running to the door, looking out, trying to see what happened when EMS is trying to assist that student. And so we have the nightshade there for either hold or either secure or a lockdown. The third thing that I have up there is our BTAM process, and it's behavior threat assessment and management. And essentially, when a student has or commits I don't even want to call it a violation. When a student says something that they perhaps shouldn't say or does something that they perhaps shouldn't do, at times we will work with our psychs and our social workers, and we will have them. We will screen them through our BTAM process, and essentially we are determining the level of threat that student is in that moment. It is not a predictor. It is not a profiler. It is not something that will tell you that yes, this student will commit something in the future or not. We are determining whether that student made a threat or is actually posing a threat. And I think for parents, for me, that's a hard thing to wrap my mind around. For teachers, it is as well. Does the student have the capacity? Do they have the history? Do they have the access? Those are all of the things that our principals will run through. And if the answer to some of those questions is yes, then there's a more comprehensive evaluation that happens with that student. So we have that process in place as well in the event that something happens where we're like, we should probably take another look at this. We also work very closely with the Royal Oak Police Department. Antonio Lipscomb is our SRO, School Resource Officer. He's phenomenal. We work very closely with the Chief of Police and the other leadership at the police department. Then Officer Joe Yerke does safety training for us. It was a very effective safety training because he really engages people. I was like beside myself at times, but he was amazing. And he did a really nice job of explaining an extremely difficult topic to talk about in a deep and meaningful way. And in that one, I will tell you, everybody was emotionally engaged. They were very excited to learn about what Mr. Yerke was talking about. So we practice these things. You will hear us talk about these things. You may get letters that we went into a hold. At some point, I think we would like to go away from that because a hold can mean literally anything. You know, there was a spill in the hallway and we don't want 1,200 kids at the middle school running through it. And so we're going to go into hold for 4 minutes. Now you're getting a letter home. We probably don't need to get a letter home. There was no threat posed. The whole reason we're using the standard response protocol, which is right here, is because there are different levels. And so if you're in a hold mode, really you're not doing anything aside from keeping your kids where they are at. You're doing business as usual, everything is happening. If you didn't hear somebody get on the microphone and say, like, we're gonna go into hold mode, kids would not even know it. They're just continuing business as usual. Secure mode is kind of one step up from that. You're kind of getting kids in from the class, from the hallway and bringing them in. And again, it's not necessarily a threat, but something is happening. And a lot of times that's when something is happening outside the building. We'll get a call from the chief of police. Hey, somebody robbed a bank 1.5 miles away. We just want to make sure that everybody's okay. Can you do us a favor, get all your kids inside the school, get them inside classrooms. You know, we're going to have business as usual. Sometimes in secure mode too, we'll even let kids go through the hallway. We'll just remain in lock. We used to call it lock in. But the idea remains the same. Nobody's going in or out because there is something outside of the school. And then you have lockdown. Get everybody in your classroom, put the night lock in, pull the shade, get out of sight. Okay? Evacuate and then shelter are obviously the other two. And again, our kids know these terms. They practice them. All of our teachers have gone through I Love You Guys training. As administrators, we go through it as well. I had a very similar training that I went through in Allen Park, and this is, I find the messaging better on this one than the last one. I think it's less aggressive, for lack of a better term, and it's more student-friendly. So this is the BTAM process that I talked about a little bit, just to give you a little bit more information on it. But you're identifying the person, you're gathering information, you're assessing the person in the situation, and then you're managing them and offering them interventions. I love this picture. So just want to talk a little bit about some of the great things that are happening. So financial stewardship is really one of the important things for us. We got our audit back. It has been board approved. We're waiting for a few things from the federal government. Everybody in the state of Michigan is waiting. Everybody across the country is waiting for a few things from the federal government. But we can't close out the audit yet, even though it is, for all intents and purposes, closed. We got the highest designation, which is unmodified opinion. And so basically that means we're not asking you to go in and change anything. We have a budget amendment. I hope we didn't get any, actually, I hope we did get news that broke. But unless we got news that broke, any amendments that we would do at this point are frivolous. And so once we figure out what our state funding is, which again is another category here, we're relatively optimistic about it. Once we figure out what that is, then we're going to make a budget and we'll amend it. We feel like we're in pretty good shape, but we're going to have to wait and see what our state funding is. The financial management that has happened in this district has been great. We have about a 23% savings account. It's called our fund balance. And so that's nice. That means that, again, we can continue operations for 3 or 4 months with the cash that's on hand. And then we also have money to do project complete things. So that leads into our strategic plan. Everything we do leads into this. Again, we've talked about our academics. We've talked about school and community connections. I think those are extremely important. We've talked about the use of financial and physical resources. And then I haven't touched on it much, but we are fully staffed. We are, anytime we have a position that we have to hire, we are overwhelmed with applicants, and it's always good. We are able to attract and typically retain the best staff that we have. So this is our long-range plan. It was developed in 2023, and it's going to continue through 2028. We're constantly evaluating it. It was a part of our end-of-the-year admin council last year, beginning of the year admin council this year, and you're going to hear us continuously refer to this because this was something that was created by a whole lot of stakeholders, and it's not something that like one person comes in or a new board that gets elected or whatever. This is a living document that we're going to be working with for the next 5 years, or 3 years, sorry. I only have a couple more. I think I'm pretty much through this. So this is an important one. This is say yes to ROS. Carrie, I took it, but I kind of modified it. Yeah, I modified it. You didn't say ROS. You said Royal Oak. Say yes to Royal Oak. Do you already have the signs? Do I need to change that back? I need to change it back. Mary Ann, do we already have the signs? Maybe. Okay. So August of 2026, we have the opportunity to go out for a zero increase bond, which means you will not pay any more money than you are currently paying right now. The cornerstone of that project, we believe, is going to be the early childhood expansion that I spoke about earlier, where we can add about 15 to 20 new classrooms onto this building. And then all of the other buildings, as you try to do with every bond, between that and between our sinking fund, we'll get enhancements and improvements. So that's ours at zero increase. The other thing that probably may be happening in 2026 is an Oakland County enhancement millage. And this one is important. This one is going to take a lot of education, though, because the Oakland County enhancement millage is something that we don't have, but Wayne and Macomb counties have it. And basically it is an additional tax levy. We believe 1.5 mils. Is that what we remember? I think I remember that. 1 to 1.5 mils. It's trying to get 27 superintendents with 7 board members for each superintendent to agree on, like, a pizza topping is impossible, let alone what we're going to tax our community in Oakland County. So it's going to be I believe it's going to be 1.5 mils. The nice thing about this is you can use it for anything. And so it can be used for true enhancements. It can be used for transportation. It can be used for salaries. It can be used for building. There are limits on most of the things that we have. You can't use bond dollars for teacher salaries. You can't use sinking fund dollars for furniture in classrooms. Enhancement has no restrictions. It's essentially an extra allowance per pupil is the easiest way to say it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. There are districts called donor districts and receiver districts. That is because the allocation is going to be across the county. And so depending on what you pull in, some districts will give money to other districts to make sure that their levels rise to the same. Other districts will they're going to pay $1 and they're going to get $1.20 back. Royal Oak, we know, is going to be a donor district. So you're going to give $1 and like 10 cents is going to go to the rest of the county. The great part about that is don't focus on that 10 cents. Focus on the 90 cents that stays in Royal Oak for the true enhancements. In Wayne County, I went through this. They did not see it the first time through, and now you drive around and like Wayne County people do not know how they lived without the enhancement millage. It was a wonderful thing for the county, even if you were a donor district. And so focus on what we get and really the good that we're doing for other people. We know that schools are underfunded and have been underfunded for a long time, so this helps kind of bring us up to the level that we want. So we will have some state opportunities for stakeholder engagement. There's going to be some bond committees, and then there's going to be opportunities at board meetings, and then there will be forums similar to this one where we can come talk about like what we think should be in the bond. Any questions? Not as of 7:59. Okay. We're slightly optimistic. We heard from our lobbyists at Oakland County ISD on Friday that like a lot of the things that we were hoping for are in there. As of right now, our students are going to have to pay for breakfast and lunch tomorrow. We believe, though, that that is going to be included when the budget eventually does pass. But, you know. That's a fair point. So also we're in the midst of a federal shutdown, so it's great. Yeah, everything's fine. I feel like the dog with his cup of coffee and the fire all around sometimes. Oh, that's DC. Okay. All right. Well, we don't got to worry about it. Well, yeah, it's gonna, maybe we do. This is fine. Other questions that we have? Nobody has any questions? I was so excited to take questions. Yes. The International Baccalaureate Program, Royal Oak. It's a great question. So I've heard a lot. I've been yelled at by a student board member, and it was a wonderful exchange that I had with Leilani, if anybody saw that. But she, at one of my coffee with the superintendent, which, by the way, the next one is October 7th at 8 a.m., or October 2nd at 8 a.m. at the office coffee shop. So whether we deliver college rigor standards through the International Baccalaureate or through the College Board and AP classes are not up for debate. The question is, what vehicle do we use to deliver them? Do we use the IB standards, or do we use the IB program, or do we use the AP program? And so we're evaluating that now. One of the things that we know about the IB program is that there are restrictions that we right now are not able to accommodate. So one of the issues that I heard about, and the further I investigated in this it is true, is that students who are going into 6th grade from 5th grade, if they don't get in the correct math class, they are never able to exhaust the math IB curriculum. They cannot do it. And so a decision that a 10-year-old makes impacts where they can get to their senior year in high school. Our theory of knowledge course, which I think is probably the best thing the IB offers, is not offered during the day. So if you want to take theory of knowledge, you got to get to school at 7 o'clock in the morning and you got to be here. We are spending $500,000 on what I will call non-instructional staff. That is not a value claim. It just means they are not instructing any students throughout the day. This is all for the IB/DP program. The DP program is the diploma program, which is the high school portion of it. And then the MYP is the middle years program. The other thing that we have found is that, and I have heard that, like, well, the marketing is not great for the IB and DP program, and that's why it's bad. Our ELA DP classes have been on a steady incline over the last few years. And I think that we have 40 more students in our ELA classes, and that our social studies classes have been pretty steady where they are at. Students have self-selected out of the math and the science courses for the DP. And I don't know why that is. And so that's one of the things that we are evaluating. So is the DP program and the IB program gone? No. Are we evaluating it? Yes. Is there a possibility that it will be gone? Absolutely. Okay, I think that that is one of the things where when we are looking at this, when I have a 5th grade teacher in here who says to me, you're spending $500,000 on non-instructional staff and I have 1 instructional coach for 6 buildings. How do I do that? I have 9 kids, 9 or fewer kids in 9 DP/IB classes at the high school. And so I think we have to figure out, why are kids not in that class? And will they go into that class, or do we have to say we're going to let our 11th graders finish the DP program, so that they would take it as seniors. And then we're going to double down with our underclassmen as in the in the AP program. And that means adding a ton of AP courses. I really like AP Human Geography. I was a big proponent of it. When I was a high school principal, I had about 140 kids out of 300 kids taking AP Human Geography as freshmen. So they can have a rigorous experience. I had 60 kids taking AP US History as freshmen, and then of those 60 kids, 30 were taking both AP US History and AP Human Geography. And so kids can have that rigorous path, and then that led to AP World History and AP Environmental Science and AP Lang and AP Lit and AP Research and AP Seminar and all of these classes. And so the idea of a college level experience while you're still in high school is a non-negotiable for me. That will absolutely happen. That was how I think became the superintendent of Royal Oak. Without that experience in my background of having over 50% of my students take at least one AP class at my high school, I don't think I would be here today. By the time I left, I had 6 national merit semifinalists in 1 year. 6. That was pretty awesome. That was like a great year. Sent 2 kids to MIT. So I say all of this to say that that part of it, stretching everybody, bringing rigor, is a non-negotiable. If it happens through IB or DP, great. If it happens through AP, great. That is not going to go away. The vehicle that we deliver might be different than what it is currently. Other questions? Dangle that cared about busing. So it's a great question. I think it's stuff we need to talk about, right? Like just gonna keep shoving it under the rug for the next guy. So busing went away a long time ago, and we looked into it, and we found out through our transportation company that we pay a lot of money per student to bus right now. Transportation company was like, well, you pay a lot of money to bus right now because you bus special education students only. And I said, that's true, but the thing about a federal law is that everybody in the United States has to do the same thing, so why are we any different from Berkeley? And so we pay more money than just about any other district that I was able to pull a comparison from. Yeah, that's how I looked at them too. And so I asked our transportation company to look at what more efficient routes would look like so that our costs could come down per student in our current environment. But then also, what would it look like to transport more students to schools? So right now, we transport about 89 students to schools each day, and our cost is $1.8 million. If you look at West Bloomfield, it sounds like a lot of money. It's a lot of money to you and I. I don't have $1.8 million to put down. Let me put in context. Our annual budget is $88 million. So imagine you make $88 million, and once a year you got to dole out $1.8 million. It doesn't sting as much, I promise you. But it's a lot of money. But when you look at some other districts, West Bloomfield as an example, and again, this is just open information that anybody can get from people, so I don't have a problem sharing it. West Bloomfield transports about 2,000 kids a day, and they pay $4.2 million. They use the same transportation company. They own their buses. There are some small differences between the two of us. But I say that to say I think we can look at more efficient routes. It may be some changes on our end. We may have to switch our start and our end times to accommodate this. I don't know if that's something we want to do. It may cost us $1 million. I don't know if that's something we want to do. We may have to do different things with the buses that we have or bus routes or some of those things. I don't know if that's what we want to do. But what I am telling you and why we can talk about it is because we're going to talk about it and we're going to say these are some of the options that we have as opposed to just saying we can't do it. I don't know if we can, but I also don't know that, So I don't think it. I think it is a TBD thing. I think it is an evaluation. We're evaluating a lot of things. Dr. Ioannis, evaluate everything. We're doing it all. So that's where we're at on busing. We pay a lot of money for transporting few kids, and so the first thing that we want is how can we transport those students efficiently and effectively for a lower cost. And then the second thing, sooner rather than later, we want to know how can we transport more kids for not much more of a cost. Because again, we don't need to transport 2,200 kids or 2,000 kids around West Bloomfield, which is larger geographically and has more students than we do. But what would a price look like for Royal Oak to provide the exact same services that they have at that ratio? I don't know. That's what they're going to tell us. That's why they're the experts.
Are those 89 kids all special
All special education students. Most of them require wheelchairs. Most of them require, many of them require a paraprofessional. So, yeah. We do. That's a great question. Yeah, so we get reimbursed at 74% for each one of those special education students. But again, that's a federal law, and so like all of these other, yeah. So like the cost is $1.8 million going out. It's not $1.8 million coming in, but like again, sure would be nicer if we paid a little bit less. So, other questions? Jeanette, you have a question? Hit me with them. Other questions? All right. I made it out of here in an hour and 9 minutes. I don't think that's too bad. I could keep you here for 3 more hours. Just, trust me on that one. So we're on all kinds of social media. I have a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. JJ, number 2 from the football team, interviewed me. He was amazing. That's the most recent episode that's up. I had Tanya's Pizza. Mia Waterstreet told me to try Tanya's Pizza. I'd never had it before. It's delicious. Like, I've had it 3 times since the first time. What's that? What's the Royal Ochre? Okay. No, man, I just had, like, the cheese with the crust and the crust. Now I got to get the Royal Ochre. That sounds like heartburn for me. Okay. So then JJ told me that I had to go to Yogurt City, which I had never been to before. I went to Yogurt City, also delicious. Deb, did you know about this? Why did you not tell me about this? Yeah. I would always be there. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. So for those of you that don't know, we have Deb Anderson here, Secretary of the Board, Michelle Cook, Trustee, Treasurer of the Board, Tim Chahorsky, President, and Marianne Van Heitzma is a trustee. So these are our 4 board members that were here tonight. The other 3 all have an excused absence. They all called in. They were all very sorry. They also said, I'm doing an amazing job, and I have that in writing. And so yeah. So these are different ways to communicate with us. We also have an app. I did not know that. I just downloaded the app. So I'm excited, but I'm excited for the school year. See me around, say hello to me, stop me, come talk to me, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. I try to have as open of a door as I possibly can. I will talk to you. You may not agree with me, but I will talk to you. But it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to a lot more fun and a lot more success at Royal Oak for the next school year. Thank you.